Hello, my name is Evgeny, and today I'm going to be covering FastAPI and SQLModel and how to build the backend applications with them. Why I'm making this video overall is because I didn't really like the quality of the videos that is out there about FastAPI. Generally, they're either too basic or too specific. They usually don't cover all the stuff that you're going to usually deal with, like authentication. A lot of videos don't use any databases at all. They just set up some very basic endpoint, put a list in Python and say, you see it works, so cool, and whatever. But it's not really useful. And I prefer myself to learn stuff from videos, but here I think most videos are lacking in quality. So I decided to make my own video after I understood how it works. And I will also be covering SQLModel, which is relatively new thing. Most other tutorials and videos, if they use database, they do it with SQL Alchemy. But SQLModel uses the SQLModel. First of all, it was made by the same creator that made FastAPI, so it kind of makes sense to use it. And we'll go into it further. So what I'm going to be covering today, you can see it here. First of all, it's FastAPI itself. Then database with SQLModel, database migration with Alembic, authentication using JWT tokens, project structure, and how to filter requests and validate data. So, without further ado, let's get started. But first, we will have some theory. I will talk a little bit about how it all works and why it works and why it's overall important. If you don't want to hear that or you know all that stuff, you can just skip to the coding part. So yeah. So, first of all, the FastAPI is a ASCII-based framework. It's what ASCII is. It's a synchronous server gateway interface. And what it is, it's a spiritual successor of WSGI that was the server gateway interface before, but it is asynchronous. Well, what is ASCII and WSGI and how it works overall? Well, it's the part that sits in between your backend application and HTTP requests, and that translates the request from web server into something that Python can read. Otherwise, you're just taking requests from web server, and Python doesn't really know what to do with that. And WSGI and ASCII is something that translated. And on the opposite, when you send some data back to the web server, it also goes through ASCII or WSGI again, translated back to something that web server can understand and sends the response back. So yes, how traditional one works is shown here pretty much. We can use several, but like JUnicorn is one of the. So what is difference with ASCII and why it matters? Well, here's my drawing about how WSGI works basically, and how ASCII works, and what are advantages. So here we have someone who sent in a request to our server. And let's say the server takes a pretty long time in the database to get some data or upload some data, or overall just takes a long time with some input-output operation. And before it can send a response or serve any other requests, it has to wait for the database flow query to finish first. And only then, and all those other requests and people are waiting. Well, generally, it's not just one request that server can take at a time. It's usually several either way. But in particular, it's what happens with each one of them. So if too many people at one time get some slow queries, then other requests just can't be served at all, and the server might start losing them. And what's ASCII doing instead? ASCII, well, when it serves a person with a slow query, request with a slow query to database, let's say, instead of just waiting for it to finish before serving everyone, he creates like available and can serve other requests meanwhile. So it doesn't block, just like other asynchronous operations work overall. They await the blocking part and serve the other people and other processes at the same time. So yeah, that's how it works basically. So someone sent a request, it's slow, but nonetheless other people are getting their responses and are served at the same time. So basically it's like if you were cooking and instead of waiting for pasta to boil and create some sauce for it, later you create the sauce at the same time that your pasta is cooking. So it kind of makes more sense and doesn't take as long time. And how does it translate to something, how it is in particular? So I took it from some article of a person who did some benchmark. And here we have basically a comparison of how ASCII and WSGI work. So we have WSGI, Django, async Django, and FastAPI here. And as you can see, this is 20 users that create like 20 requests. Here's 100 users that create 100 requests, and here's 200 users creating 200 requests each. Each. And as you can see, when we're serving with WSGI, here basically 90% of our requests are failed. We basically have an application that doesn't work at all. And it's something that, well, not really a good way to do if you have a big scale application. And with FastAPI, it was just around 40%, and failures a second are even much lower. Here we also have, I think, Django an example. But the thing with Django, and Django supports asynchronous requests to web server since Django 3.0, since third version. But from what I've heard, first of all, if you are working with Django, you're most likely, and you're making an API, you most likely use Django as framework. And well, it doesn't work with asynchronous Django. Also middleware in Django, even like coarse middleware headers, it doesn't work. A lot of things don't work in Django, and people say that the experience of writing Django async application is quite painful and not quite what you're used to while making a regular one. So let's get back to our scheme. Well, Starlet is a web framework that was based on that ASCII, and FastAPI took Starlet and Pydantic, which is a data validation and annotation tool, to make a new framework. Pydantic is, well, how it looks. Usually it looks something like that. It kind of reminds of data classes if you ever use them. Uh, you have a base model from which you're inheriting. You show the type, what type are the parameters that you're making, and it does well. We'll get to it later, but it does a lot of stuff behind it, and it helps to validate data, and also helps your linter that is working. So. It uses Pydantic and Starlet, but also a SQLModel that I'm going to be covering today also uses, first of all, it also uses Pydantic by itself, and it uses SQLAlchemy, and it's something in between SQLAlchemy and Pydantic. It combines them together to work better with FastAPI. So that's why it kind of makes sense to do that, because FastAPI is already dependent on Pydantic. So why not combine them together and not do the same stuff that you are making in SQLAlchemy, providing the same fields and whatnot. So yeah, that's why we can use SQLModel and why it makes sense. And well, we can also use Alembic to make a database migration. I'll show you that. So yeah, and what's the project that we have today? Well, let's say we have a gemstone shop. And it will have, we can create some gems, so some precious stones, in a database that will have some specific properties. So it will have some type, but it will be only fixed types, like those three. We can't just make someone write their own. Then it will have properties, which will be a separate database table that will have size, color, and clarity of it. That are also something that can, color and clarity will be a choice. You should select out of something that is done. Then it has price, and we can see if it's available or someone already bought it. And examples are here. You can see how it might look in the database. Yes. What we're going to need for the project is Python 3.8 or higher and SQLite browser. We'll use SQLite database, and well, some IDEs have support to show database, some don't. But that SQLite browser is something that is free and easy to install. So you can go ahead and download it. If you don't want them, you have something else in where you can look at the database, you can use that instead. So if you don't have it, then just download that. So let's try to start our project. Okay, so first we will create a new project. I'm using PyCharm. You can use whatever you want. First, let me show you how it can look like, how our application might look like when it's ready. See, we have endpoints for gems. We can filter them. We can show all of them. Let's do that For example, you see we get it says diamond, price that, available, whatnot. We can select ruby. Now we only get rubies. Also, we can create gem by passing the body with information. We can get some specific one. Let's say that's 45 one. We have 45th. Then we can do update, delete, patch, and same we can create properties. Then we have authentication for sellers, and for users we have registration, login, and get current user, and they're all they're using authentication. So yeah, so it will be something like that in the end. Point 9. As you can see, we just create a regular Python project, nothing specific for now. Okay, so first let's go ahead and create a requirements.txt file. In requirements, we need FastAPI, SQLModel, and unicorn for our database. Then go to your terminal, and install the requirements. Okay, so we don't need that stuff in main. You create main.py. We don't have it yet. Okay, let's wait for stuff to finish. Also, one of the things that I forgot to mention is ASCII supports HTTP tool, which is pretty cool by itself. It's a binary format instead of HTTP 1.1 that is generally used. It's more lightweight, and it reuses the same TCP connection that it creates, so it will be faster. And WSGI doesn't support that, but we won't be using that in this video because it comes with some overhead, which is, well, you need to install certificate, and maybe I will show that if I will make any other videos. Maybe I will show that next. So okay, let's create our minimal file from FastAPI. We import FastAPI. Okay, something is wrong with my installation for some reason. With my okay, now it's fine. Okay, we import unicorn, our server, and create an instance of an app FastAPI. We can make simple endpoint that will say hello. Turn hello world. And I'm gonna be starting very basic, and I will be showing how things can be done, and then I'm going to progressively make it more complicated, and how it should be, more or less, at least how I envision that. Okay, the main unicorn run. Okay, application, we send host, local host, and port 8,000. So let's run our first server. Localhost 8,000 now says hello world as expected. Okay, now we need some database. And first we're going to create some models for that database. So let's create a directory models in which we will make file gem models. Okay, now how we're going to do that? First, as I've shown, we need to create a gem, and it will have type, properties, price, and is available. So let's try to do that. First, create class gem, and it will be inheriting from SQL model, which we will import soon. Okay, PyCharm has automatic import of that stuff, but you can just write it down. So it will have an ID and how it works overall. If you're familiar with typing in Python, then it will be something that you've probably seen already. But okay, and field is also an instance of SQL model, so import field from here. Okay, how it works. First we're writing the name of property, then after semicolon we're writing what the type is, and then if we want to set a default, we set it after equal sign. So yes, that means we'll have a field of size, it will be an instance of float, and default one will be 1, and it's mandatory, it's something that you can skip, otherwise you need to write optional. Okay, what is field? Field is basically if you have some extra information that you want to pass to the, and here it works basically the same, by the way, as Pydantic, with some extra features. But here you can just write the same stuff. If you are familiar with Pydantic, you just can write like Pydantic one. So yeah, if you have any other stuff, like you can set default here, you can write a description and whatever, you can set primary key, you can set an index here. If you need that for your field in the database, then you're importing field and putting it here. If you don't need them, you can just do it like here, and it can be as simple as this. You don't have to do anything else, but let's set size default to 1. And okay, we need to show the clarity, and it's something that gemstones have, basically how clear they are, and it increases their value. And we have those options. So how do we set that gem clarity? Should we create another database table for them? I think that we shouldn't, because there is an easier way to do something like that in Python, and it's using enum. So let's import enum from enum, import enum. And let's say we want to make a gem clarity field. We write clarity, and it will be an instance of gem clarity that we're going to create right now. Okay, so create class gem clarity that inherits from enum. Now we have those types. As I showed, this one is This one is the dirtiest one. Then this one is a bit better one. And this one is one more clear. And this one is flawless. Okay, and now we want to make it optional, so it's not mandatory. And how we do that is we write optional and we import it from typing, from Python typing. And that's how you set optional fields in typing overall, if you're familiar with that. And we want the default to be none. And same goes for color. Now we want our gem to have some color. And let's just copy that. Call it gem color. And the colors are like that. D, which is the whitest one, but it's actually only for diamonds, but to keep it more simple, we'll use it for everything. Okay, H, and the most like yellowish one is I. Okay, and now we do the same. Optional, gem color, default is none. Okay, and it has to have some properties on which we'll determine its price. So let's create gem properties. We want it to be a part of, we want to be a foreign key basically. So let's create same way class gem properties SQLModel. Table true. What table true means? It basically means that for that class you have to create a table in your database, because sometimes you don't have to do that. Sometimes you want your table just to be used for validation, let's say, or just a response type. We'll get into it later. But yes, it's something that can happen that way. So only those who have that have table true will be actually created in the database. I'm sorry, I made some mistake. Actually, site will be a property, and here we'll have a price instead. And let's say it will be also float. And yeah, just that. We won't set anything for now. And actually, I made even more mistakes. It's all properties of gem, but the gem itself, besides price, will have availability, available, it will be boolean and true by default. And gem type, we'll be referencing gem types, and we can have several types. We can have a diamond, we can have emerald and ruby. And as you can guess, again, we will use enum for that. So let's do gem types. We can do like diamond, ruby, and emerald. Okay, and actually for to cover something else, let's do that one typed with how it's called, like integer enum. Okay, so we want gem type referenced here, gem type or types. Let's write types. Okay, gem types, and by default, how you set the default of something like that. you just write gem type dot and any of them. So let's make diamond by default. Okay, how do you create foreign key in SQLModel? Well, you can do it that way. We'll do gem properties ID, and it will be referencing ID of gem properties. You can set optional. It will be integer since it's ID. And we once again import field, write default none because we don't want that, and write foreign key and set it to gem properties .id properties. Yeah, and you might have noticed that here I am writing with small letters and here it's capitalized, and you might think it's a mistake, but actually no. We're referencing here, and here we are writing the name of a table, not a class. And here it's capitalized because it's a class. And if you will see later that when we actually create a table, it will be called that way. It will be all like lowercase. So yeah. Pydantic field, as I told, can be used to set some metadata inside of Pydantic models. Okay, now let's create the database itself. Let's go to main.py and add engine, create engine. So SQLite is usually written that way. I guess it's free. Here database. Let's call it just database.db. And let's set equal to true. You will see what that does. Import create engine from SQLModel. Yes. And let's make a function that will create that stuff. Create DB and tables. SQLModel dot metadata create all, and we're passing our engine here. So to our if name.main will pass after that, will pass that function. And let's try to do that. And you see we get an error. Why is that? I'll tell you why. Okay, first I'm thinking it's actually 4 here. Let me check that. SQLite. SQLite URL, and it uses 3. Okay. Okay, I forgot the semicolon here. It's one thing. Okay, it works. Now it works, and it should have created our database, but it didn't. So let's try to run that again. Yes, now we have that database.db. Okay, now let's open our DB browser for SQLite. And okay, it doesn't want to do that. Sometimes it doesn't, then you have to show. Okay, where did they put that stuff? Open an Explorer. Okay. And here's our database. It didn't create tables, as you can see. And it's pretty bad. So what's the deal? So actually, we didn't import models, and that's our main reason. So when you create, when you want to create tables, you have to import your models. So we'll write from models, gem models, import, well, everything. And let's try it again. And now we had another error. And what is it this time? So actually, we need something unusual to do something unusual here. It has to do with our ID and with how it's made. We have to also make it optional, even though you know that primary key can be optional. It's always in the database, right? But here in SQLModel, we have to write optional for every primary key. And it has to do with some stuff that is happening like underneath. Because it first creates a Python instance and then translates it into SQLModel. And it needs it to be something that can be like. So let's try again, run main. Schema item, constraint, got in okay, here I have, sorry. With enums, there's also one more trick. Basically, in order for it to work, they should also inherit your enums that you're passing to SQLModel. They have to also inherit from string here, because we use string. Here it can inherit from integer like that, or you can just import int enum. I guess it also exists. It will be actually literally same thing, I think. Int enum, is it that way? Yeah, int enum. It's the same thing as I show. And here it should also inherit from string. And every time you're making some optional choice field through enum, it has to be made that way. And it's written in Pydantic documents. They also show it to be created that way. And okay, now finally, as you can see, we don't have any errors. And we can now check our database. And for some reason, nothing happened. Wait. Let's try. And now I saw something, like it actually did something. Okay, let's try to open it again. Sometimes it happens. Yes. Okay, and you see that we have two tables now that we created, gem and gem properties, and they have all that stuff. And we wrote echo true in here. Did we? Yes, we wrote when create engine, we wrote echo true. What that does is every time you insert anything in a database, it will show that in your terminal what it's doing in SQL actually, what queries it generates. So it can be helpful for debugging, let's say, or something like that. So, okay, now we have our database finally. And now let's try to populate it with something. But we won't do that by ourselves. We won't do that manually. We will create some functions to populate the database. So let's just call them populate.py, let's say, create a file. And Okay, we need to create gem first of all. So create gem, and it will be an instance of sure gem. Import that. Now the field has a price. Let's say it will be 1,000. We can open that split right, and we can see our database. So yeah, price will be 1,000, and it needs some gem properties and gem type. Okay, gem properties ID will be a gem P, gem properties, and we will have it as dependency. We'll return gem instance, and let's make a properties creation. Gem props. Doesn't have to take anything. It will have size as we need, and let's make it random. So we'll use random rand int, and well, it's a float, and how we can create a float is we basically create some integer and just divide it by, let's say, 10. Oops, just import random. And here it will create basically anything from 0.3 to 7. Then we have color. So how do you, now it's an interesting thing. How do we create something for gem color if it's already assigned and we only need those? Well, we can write something like, let's say we'll just write color grades, and it will be string and ASCII uppercase. It's basically just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and whatnot. And we just take those letters from here, and we can take any one of them now. Color grades, random, randint, and now we need to, since we have 6 of them, any of them, 0 to 5. And now clarity, since we have just int in them here, we can just make a random integer. It will be random randint 1 to 4, since they are 1 to 4. And let's create the instance of our model itself. Gem properties, size is size, clarity is clarity, and color is color. Import gem properties from our models. Okay, now here, and let's return them. Sure. Okay, now let's try to create that in database as well. Create gem props. First we create properties of a gem, since it doesn't require anything. And then we can print them to see what it created, just to see. And then what do we do to actually create, put it into database? We use a session, and it takes an engine as a parameter. So first we need to import our engine from main. Then we import session from SQLModel. And with session as session, it will be a context manager. We write session add our gem property, then session commit, and I'll try to tell what it does. So I said it's a context manager. Context manager is when you write with something as something, and what it does is once it finishes here, it will close the session, because we can also write it the other way without context manager, but we shouldn't forget to close it, because session puts all the stuff that you create inside it into your memory, and if you don't close the session, it won't free the memory in the end, and you needed to do it that way. So we do it that way, and commit pushes the stuff into your database until you write commit. Nothing is actually ever gets into database. It all is that session add. We can add a lot more things here, and they will be just stored in memory. Only when you write commit, they go into database. So you're only hitting it once when you write it. Okay, and then let's create the gem itself. Sure, create gem. We put our gem property now in there, and we're referencing ID. Don't forget that, since here it's like that. We're referencing ID. Then we also added to session add our gem, and we're also committing that. And let's try it. Let's just write create gems database. It will create one for now, and we can see what it does. So let's run the populate. And you see our echo gave us the information of the queries that it said insert into values. Okay, I'm not sure what's gone wrong here, or if something gone wrong, but okay, let's look in here. We go to browse data and we can look, and it created the diamond with our 1,000 price, and yeah, everything is correct, as you can see. It created 1.8 carat size, so second clarity and color app. Great. Okay, we can see it in database. Let's make some views so we can access this easily from framework. Okay, so let's create something that will help us first. Let's create repository. It's called gem repository. And now what we need a select function to get our gems. How are we going to do that? First of all, import our engine from main import engine. Then from models, gem models, import gem and gem properties. And we're going to need our session again. So from SQLModel, we import session. And let's do that. So let's create select gems command that we will use later in our URLs, basically. So again, with session, to it from passing engine, session. And how do you query database through SQLModel? It's something like that. First, you write a statement. And here we will use select, that is also part of SQLModel. From SQLModel, import select. And here we're passing a model to be a gem here. It returns a session object. because gem is a class, it will always return to classes to return a session object. And when you want to execute, you write session exec and put the statement inside. So our statements were basically just selecting gem, and that's all. And we can now we can show what we want. Let's say we can print result that all will, as it says, well, it will just print everything that it has there, just all gems that we have. We can also print result 1 if we're confident that our query will only return one response. But if it doesn't, then we'll have an error. And if you still need just one but don't want an error, you can do that. You can print a result first and return that. So yes, but let's say it's that way. Okay. So let's try to select something. I'll just show how it works in general. Let's try to select something for, now let's do select gems overall and try to see if it prints something. No such table, gem. Weird. Okay. I know why it's weird. Okay, you see it created new database here. And the problem is that you can also have that problem. So, okay, delete that if it made some new database. Why did that? We have a relative import here. You see the engine is creating a relative path. And when we're importing that engine here, unfortunately, it still thinks it's in this folder and just creates a new one. And then it says, yeah, I don't have that because, well, this database is empty. So it kind of makes sense what it does. Did it delete that? So instead, what we can do is to put the full path to our project, to our database. Here it will, for me, here will be f string. We will import the full path here, and the prefix is SQLite. So here we'll just pass the SQLite URL now, and we'll try to run it again. Okay, what's wrong? ng. Okay. And you see now it actually showed us something. Here is the result that we have. It's some gem that we have. So yeah. Now I'll show some other stuff that you can do. Now, let's say we want some specific one. We don't want just all gems. Okay, my bad. It's I ran populate. Okay. Select. I'm running select again, and it should show that. Yeah. Okay. Now, since I ran the other one twice, we have two gems, and that's them printed. You can see that. And let's say we want only some specific one. Let's say we want the second one. How do we do that? Well, we just do the statement, and you can nest statements. Since it returns that session objects, they can be nested however much you want before you do the session execute. So here we can use the same statement, and it will be statement, and then where clause, just like in SQL, but here it's written that way, and we write gem.id. And what we want, let's say we want that second one, And now we want to show that second one. And let's run it again. And now we should see only the second one. And that's what happens. And okay, notice here a couple of things. First thing is here we don't pass any instance. We pass the model itself. And here it's not like that. It's double equals. If we will evaluate differently, it will just return us a Boolean object, and we don't want a Boolean object. We want a session object to be returned. So it's usually done like that: model, then field, and then what we need it to. And what we need. We can also use it with other bitwise operators like bigger or less or not equals. They will all work. So if, let's say, I'll do more than one, it will print the same stuff again because, well, 2 is the only one we have and it's more than 1. So yeah, so that's how it works basically. Now, what else? We can also use and or. Actually, instead of and, you can just write another statement if you want. Or you have to import something. Let's say how can we host it? We can nest it and write where, and let's say gem ID more than 1. But gem ID less than 11, and it will work. Or like more than 0, less than 11, it will show us stuff again. But if we write less than 2, then we will only have 1 here. Yeah, you see, we have 1, and it basically works as and. Now, if you want or, you have to import or from SQLModel or underscore. And how you write it is a little bit different. So it will be like, I'll just show for statement where, and then you write or, and then in parentheses you write all the statements that you need, like gem ID over 1 and then comma and the second clause, gem price not equals 2000, let's say. Okay, what's wrong? I think it actually should work. Okay, let's try. I'm not sure why it doesn't want that to be this way. Gem price. Okay, let's try it. Yeah, it's fine. I don't know what linter's problem is here. It works. Okay, so yeah, that's how you can do that. But okay, now we won't do that. Also, let's make our server to reload to, so we don't have to, if we change anything, we don't have to start it again every time manually. How you do that is to unicorn run instance. You add just reload true, but it also should, after that, it needs to be a little different here. You first write, I think you write main, and then you write the app name. Or not the app name, the app here, I think. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it works. Okay, now if we add anything, it will just do reload automatically each time. Okay, so where are we going next? Let's make an endpoint for gems, finally. Okay, we don't need that anymore. Well, let's just make gems endpoint. Now we will use our stuff that we created, and we'll say gems, repos, gem repository, select gems. Okay, let's make that select all gems. since it will just be selecting all, and it should return that result. Return result.all. And here we don't have to do that, otherwise it will do it each time by itself, each time we import it. Okay, cannot find references. Yes, now it's select all gems. Okay, and then just return, and we can return it as like gems. Now, where we can see that, go to our local host, and the cool thing about FastAPI is it has the docs, and it automatically documents what you're doing, your endpoints. And I've seen it was kind of weird, but in some videos where people use some third-party stuff, sometimes that is even not free, to show their endpoints that they made in FastAPI, like they use Postman. But here is actually where we don't need to do that. We can try it out and just execute, and we will see we got the response 200, we got our 2 gems that we have, and it works perfectly. But it has that weird hello. I don't know, did I leave that somewhere? Yeah, it's just called hello, which doesn't make sense. Now let's say it will be just gems. Okay, now we have the gem itself, but we don't have its do we have properties? No, we don't have the properties. So let's try to get the properties as well. And the cool thing about it, it also does all serialization stuff, validation stuff, everything. It kind of just does it for you. Okay, let's try to include the information about properties. So we will also make statement to be we will just adjust this one. Okay, we have gem, but it actually can take several parameters, not just one. And now we can do that. Gem properties, and now we need to say where, and gem properties ID is the same as gem properties ID. Okay, maybe it's a little confusing, but basically we're saying show us all gems and their properties where the IDs are the same. So 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Let's try to see again if it will show us the new information. And as you can see, it now shows it. It's nested now, gem and gem properties. Now we see all the information. Very cool, just like that. Now, what we can do next? We can also do it nested differently. If we don't want it to be nested automatically with the same name as the classes itself, what we can do is, let's say, for here, we have result, and we will do for gem and properties in result, we will append it to response append, and let's say we want it to be that way. We want it to say just gem, and we're passing the gem part here, and we want our properties in just written as props, and let's just return res now, and let's see what it did. Now we do the same thing, and as you can see, it is exactly what we asked to do. It nested it as we wanted to. And we can also exclude something if we don't want that, as you can understand. So that's kind of like how serialization works here. Okay. Now, let's say we want to get a specific object through our URLs as well. How we do that? It's very basic. We create another endpoint, gem, and we put in curly braces, we put ID. And let's call it just gem, not gems. And let's create just select gem and pass the ID there. First do that, and now let's create that select gem in our repository. We'll just copy that, put here, select gem. Now, as I told you, you can do statement, it will get an ID, and where gem ID is ID that we're passing. And so, yeah, basically like that. It will be just one, so we will just print the return result dot first. Result dot first. And let's import it here. We made the relative import, so let's look. Refresh the page. And now let's say we want to, something I did wrong. Sure, I forgot to show that it takes this parameter here. And now, again, refresh. Yeah, now it asks us for ID and says that it is integer. We ask for first one, we get the first one. We ask for the second one, we get the second one. So it's pretty cool. Arguments in the URL are done that way, basically. Okay, now we used this to, now we just made a reference to ID to work with the fields that are foreign keys, but we can actually do better than that, and there is a way. Now only after we have this one, not instead, we can also, instead of referencing and taking just ID, we can reference the whole object of properties itself. And how you do that is, let's call it just gem properties. It will be optional as well. And now put gem properties here, our whole model. And we're having a new thing here. It's called relationship. And it's a SQLModel thing, so imported from SQLModel. And here we can write backpopulates gem. Gem properties, actually. Properties. First of all, it needs to be in both of these. Relationship needs to be in both of these, but they will be referencing different things. Gem properties will reference gem, but as you see, we're defining it later. So instead of model, we put it as a string. Okay, I'm struggling with my keyboard here. Okay, we put it as a string, and it will understand what's that. Okay, and it backpopulates gem properties. Here it backpopulates gem, or is it that way for Okay, what does that mean? What is back populates? What is relationship and what's all? Back populates is something that tells the database and your ideal linter that if stuff changes here in this gem properties model, it should also change in here in gem because they're related together. So it will know that stuff changed in here, and the same goes for here. They just do it both of them. Okay, and the attributes that they don't represent the column in the database, so they're not same as fields. Their value is the actual entire object that is related, and now we can access it easily. Now let me show. Now basically how we can access it. Here in populate. We create the gem here, and we can just take gem properties now. And it will have the whole entire object that is related to it. And we can just gem properties, color, as you can see. And it will take the stuff from it. So it's very convenient, and you should do it that way. Let's, okay, all the stuff that we're creating now has the same price. Let's change that. I made some function, and I will just copy paste it. That is determining the price. I will put it here. Basically, it takes instance of gem and gem properties, and looks if it's an instance of Ruby, the starting price will be 400. If it's emerald, it will be 650. If it's diamond, it will be 1000. Now, for clarity, the better clarity gets, the more expensive it gets. So I'm just multiplying that stuff by 1.5, and if it's clarity 2, it will be the same price. Then we're doing. We have the size, since size generally in real world is what determines most of the price. Here it will be a power of 3 of size, so like 2 carat will cost 8,000, and 3 carat will cost even more than that. So yeah, I decided to do it that way, and only for diamonds we're making adjustment for their by their color. And I also forgot to put that color multiplier here. It will be a dictionary that has colors and what's the multiplier for them. So yeah, like that. The best clarity will make it 80% more, the 60, and so on. And the worst one will make it cheaper. And it will return price. And now, after we have that calculate gem price, we want to use that every time we're creating a new gem. We take gem properties, so we can also calculate gem price here. Gem properties. And gem. Okay, the reverse. Okay, it will be our new price. And we set it just like normal Python object. Gem price is price. We don't need to say save or whatever. It's just a Python object at this point. Okay. Also, let's make it create a random stone, since now we're just creating diamonds all the time. And let's we can do it First of all, let's modify our enums so we can retrieve the list of what it has, each one of them, so it can return us the list of that. And how to do that? We just create class enum with the same name we'll inherit from regular enum. We create a class method here, class method, and it will be just list. And yeah, class here, and we will return the list lambda. See, is basically value of each one. For each one, we're retrieving its value, and now it will be like a. Or we can import enum as enum underscore and put it here so we don't get the enum as enum underscore. Yeah. Okay, let's now try to create a random gem type. How we do that now? We'll try gem type is random .choice and gem types dot list and import gem types dot list. And now let's pass the gem type here. We can also change the color creation the same way. It will be easier to just now do instead of what we did before. We can write color is random choice out of gem color dot list. So after we did that, now we can do our more relevant information. We can change types of gems and whatever. How will we do that? Going to populate and where we created our gem. Let's try to gem type dot list import gem. Wasn't it gem? Gem types dot list. We import that, and we're going to, and since it is just a list, we're going to use random dot choice out of them, and it will just select random gem type. So type and gem. How was it here? It was gem type, right? Type. Okay, and we're passing it here. We also don't need to do it this way anymore with color grades and whatever. We can also use choices now. So let's also try and change that random that choice, and then random choice out of gem color that list, and import that. Don't need to import string anymore. Okay. So let's create many gems now, not just one. We can do a lot more than that to just have some data to play with. So just do a comprehension here. This comprehension for x in range, let's say 100. So just create 100 of gems like that. And here, instead of this, how we put that in database now is we write create gem, then gem. First we're creating properties, and then we need to pass, as always, since our gem takes a property here, we're passing a gem property, but we need a specific one. So how we do that is we write x for x in range 100 again. So it will just create like first, link first, create 25th, link 25th, and they are here, and we're just accessing that value and passing it here. And how we add many things at once. We don't do session add anymore, we just do session add all. And we pass the list, which is gems. And we do session commit, as always, and it will do the trick. Okay, let's try and do that. Populate. Okay, we have a circular import, and that's something that is very annoying and happens when you start writing files like that, not everything in one place. And how do we gonna solve it? We need to circular import. Well, as you see, it means that the main imports one thing from here, populate the imports from main, then main itself is trying to import from the place that imports main, and they just go in circle. And most often it happens because of engine. So we're going to put it into separate directory. Let's create, let's call it database, db. Now we're just gonna take that out and put it in here. Import create engine. And now we're going to import stuff from there instead. So now everywhere where we have engine, we will import engine from db.db engine. Yeah, we don't need that. No, I don't remember if we had imported engine anywhere else in project. Okay, let's try again. Let's run main. And yeah, you see it solved the problem. Okay, good. Now let's do the populate stuff again. Okay. That's not quite. Yeah, here we'll try to import the engine from main again. So from db, import engine again. Gem properties has no property gem. Where was that tag? Okay. Gem properties p. Okay, going to find the problem. Okay, it's somewhere in here. When we're create gem props, don't take anything for x in range 100. Then session engine First of all, I forgot. Here we also need to add all, since we're doing that. Okay, it was using the old one. We're taking our list again. Oh, and I wrote it kind of weirdly. Okay, gem psx. Yeah. First we commit to database the properties, then we pass them as a parameter for gems. And let's try again. Okay, something's wrong again. Okay, so I made one more mistake. Here I forgot to change the name, and I also wrote it as gem properties, but sure it should be a gem, and that's what it's been trying to tell me. There is no field gem, no property that gem, and now we change it, and yes, it happened. As you can see, now it created different. Oh, I wish I put round price as well. Let's try that, because okay, that happens because of the float, how float is calculated in Python. If you deal with prices, it's better to use decimal field, but for simplicity's sake I won't do that here. But all the time, if you're dealing with somewhere where its precision matters, don't use float. Floats aren't because of the tricks with how floats are calculated in binary. They can never be 100% accurate, so you need to use something else. And we can, wherever we had calculate price, calculate. Yeah, let's do that. Price is price, round, price, and precision is 2. So it would be just 99 here, for example. Yeah. So now we can also look in our database, and we can see all that stuff. And gem properties are also here. Although there apparently was some mistake because gem properties ID aren't linked. Okay, the answer to why it happened actually is in front of us, and it's because we passed an object instead of ID. And actually, since we made that gem model relationship here, we don't have to write it like that anymore. Now there is a shorthand for that. We can just now write join and join on gem properties. So on the class itself. And here it's the same, and it will do exactly the same thing. Yeah. And since we created lots of data that is unusable now, let's go ahead and try to let's go and delete that stuff. Okay. We can just do it like that. Delete records. Gem properties like that, and delete records. Okay, now we don't have it anymore, but first we need to close database, or here it won't be able to access it after that. Save that, and let's do it again after we put it like we needed to, and let's try to do it. Okay, let's go and look at what do we have now. Try it out, execute. Let's take, and now you can see that we have lots of different other stuff. We have new prices, new gem types, and everything. And we mostly just wrote pure Python and a couple pretty simple commands. So it's pretty powerful how you can do that. We can try to get some specific one, and it works. Okay, now let's try to write a view for an endpoint for creating them from like that, from here. App.post now to two gems as well. Define create gem. Okay. What we're going to do now is try to first create again. We need gem properties. And its instance of gem properties and like size is. Okay, here we will take the parameter of gem property, and it will be sure the instance of gem properties. And here we will reference that instance. So let's pass it like that. Size is size. Clarity the same way. Gem PR clarity. Color. Here we're going to do something new. As you remember, to create something in database, we need to use session object and to put it inside. And before that, we used session as context manager. But here we're going to do differently. And here's why. If we use the same session as a context, then we won't be able to retrieve the object that we created in the end. Because the session will close before that, and then it will tell us that the instance that we're returning isn't bound to database, isn't bound to session. So instead we will create the session on top here like this. And we also import it. Okay. Now we can use the same session object everywhere here. And let's add our gem properties to session and commit them. Okay, now we need to do the same with the actual instance of gem. So we're writing gem. But I didn't import it yet. Not import it, I didn't put it into our properties in parameters. It's a type declaration, and I will tell you about it in a moment. And let's reference our gem properties. Was it that way? Yes. Gem properties. Now we calculate price automatically again, let's say. So we'll use our function calculate gem price. Put that inside. It takes our two parameters, and now we assign the price again to the gem object, and now also add object to session. Commit and return created gem. Okay, Actually, it will be better if we call it something separately. Okay, so this is called type declaration, and it's powerful because it reads the body of a request as JSON first of all. Then it converts the corresponding types if it's needed. Then they validate the data with our model. If data is invalid, it will return us an error, indicated where the incorrect data is. And it will return you the serialized data like that, which will have everything that we need. So it's also quite powerful. And we just do it with something simple as that. And how does it work? The parameters of our endpoints. If parameter is declared in the path, it will be used as a path parameter. If it's a singular type, like integer, float, string, boolean, or whatever, it will be interpreted as a query parameter, like here. And if it's a pydantic model type, like here, it will be interpreted automatically as a request body. So here we will have it as a request body for post. So let's try to do that. Let's try to look at what we created in docs again. Okay, we have it here. As you can see, it showed us example schema that we need to send. And we can try it. And you can notice one thing right away, that we also need to create IDs by ourselves, which is not actually perfect way, but we can do something about it later. I'll show you what. Okay, let's create that. It will be okay. We don't have to assign price. Okay, it will be size 4, also 103, and execute. Okay, we created it, but response body was empty for some reason. Maybe we returned something wrong. Yes, I probably needed to return like this. Okay, let's try 104, 104, 104, and the same. And yes, here we have a response body that is a model of gem, as we usually have it. Now, we don't need to send ID, as I said. So we can omit it by ourselves somehow, or we can create a separate class for that that won't have an ID inside it. But let's just try to omit it first. How we do it? We will put gem okay, actually this problem doesn't appear in our post request. I just realized, because it still works. Primary key is basically automatically indexed, and you can see it. If we try to create something, we don't have to explicitly say that it's that way. So we can just, I think we can just delete ID overall, or leave it as 1 or something. Okay. Okay, let's try to do it that way. Okay, no. Okay, here it says that ID is null. Let's look in the database. We have do we have any null values? No, we don't. It was actually created as normal, and it references the last one as well. Okay, it was diamond with number 405, so it got created after all, and we didn't have to specify ID, but and we also, since we're assigning gem properties ID by ourselves, we also don't have to worry much about that. As you can see, it did that correctly. It assigned the number, the value by itself. Okay, something is wrong. Okay. One thing that I forgot to do is to comment out the create gems. I was thinking why it created extra 100 stuff, but each time that we're importing populate, it executed that function, so it became more and more and more. So yeah, with that stuff out of the way, let's do that again. We want to be 22, size 7. Okay, execute. Let's look at it again. So size 7, as you see, and color D, everything as we put it, and the diamond is assigned to that number, just like we did, and we didn't have to write an ID. But where we'll have to manually do it is in the put that we will create next. But actually, let's start with patch. It's also an interesting one, and for some reason most of the tutorials just skip patch altogether and never mention it, but it's often makes more sense than making a put request, because you can send just one field in there, and it will do exactly what you want. You don't have to pass the whole object again, and it's quite convenient. So patch will take an ID that we want to, and it will take a gem as well. Now we will look for gem first. Session get gem, and it's another shorthand that we have. We can do it that way. It's a shorthand for taking something by its ID. You pass the ID itself, you pass the model that you are seeking in. And that's all you need, actually. So from now on, we can write it like that. And let's try to... okay. And the thing is, I've seen it done like that in tutorials, like that basically. And it works, and it does what it's supposed to do. But it's not the ideal way to do that. And why? Is because if you change your model somehow, then you will have to remember and go back to your code and change the fields that you changed. Or if you added some field, let's say, and you forgot to add it here, then you will send patch, but it won't work as you expect it to do if you forget to do that. So there is a shorter way, and you won't have to adjust your code if you write it like that. So let's try to do it like that. Update item encoded, and we will import new thing here, which is called JSON encoder, and it is in FastAPI. Encoder is the JSON encoder. It will basically retrieve what we send as gem. It will just retrieve that, just like here. But it will also make it in a dictionary, basically. And what we can, it will be basic Python dictionary, and how we can change it depending on values that we get. We can iterate it like a regular dictionary in Python. So for key value in items of that, and now we will do gem found, so that gem that is in database now, and we will set attribute with under method, which is basically called every time that you set something. When we do that, it under the hood it uses set utter, and we will call set utter by ourselves, and we pass key and value to it, and here it will just be key and value, and it will basically take everything you passed in it, and it will assign you values, and you don't have to do anything else. So it's very good way to do it. And after that, we can session commit and return update item encode. And we have to be careful with IDs that we send. Let's look at what we did at the patch. Oh, I forgot to change the method to patch. Here it should be patch, yes. Okay, we have patch. Let's try to retrieve number. Okay, let's see something in database. Well, 403 is Ruby. And let's try to make it a diamond for example. And we won't send anything besides that. We just want it to be diamond from now on. And if you're sending just one field, don't leave the comma hanging here, or it will give you an error like that. You'll see. You see 422, but if you remove that, you still get 422. Okay, something's wrong. Okay, my bad. It will be a patch. It will be a put. It uses a slightly different thing. JSON is used for put, and patch is done a little bit differently. And let's call it also update gem. And we will return the gem found. Now we have update gem. Here we need to send every field. So let's go and try to do it with our Ruby. So it was 503, 503. Just make it 2000, make it a diamond, available, and also 503. Execute. Okay, response body is still not quite what we expected. Okay, if we will look now at our data again, you'll see that it updated that. And that it's indeed now a diamond and it costs $2,000. We'll get to why it prints the wrong way later. And we can do the okay, here we don't want to pass the ID all the time because we're already writing it here, and if we make some mistake here we can just screw up our database. And to not worry about that, we will do something pretty simple. We will just, since it's updated item encoded, it's just a dictionary and it returns something like that. If you print it, it will be something like that. And we can use the pop method of a dictionary, and we will pop the ID, which will just set it, which will just delete that ID. And after that, let's do that. We can also do this if we don't want to update gem properties ID ever. We can do the same thing with it. But okay, let's say 505, and we will do the very same thing, but leave 503 here. And look at our database now. 505 is diamond, and it's 505. And like, you can put 502 here, but it won't change 502 because we set it explicitly. So you can do it like that. But with put, you have to provide everything that the request body might need. Everything that is a required field in your data, in your model. With patch, we can omit that and just do the patch and just send one thing that we need. And it will be very similar overall. So, okay. Let me just copy that. Okay, here we'll write patch instead of that. It will get the same thing, do the same thing here. But the big difference is that it won't use this method because we'll get an error like that, like we already did when I tried to do it with before. This will be the same, but instead of JSON encoder, we will do it like that. Update data will be a gem.dict. It's a method of FastAPI, not Python. And exclude answer true. And now we will pop the same way we'll pop the ID of update data, and here we will do exactly the same thing and return the gem found in the end. And okay, something that I forgot to do. We can pass it in here, which would make most sense. Okay, so let's try to patch now. Now we had our 505 is diamond, and cost, let's do that. But let's change it to emerald. and it says value required. Patch gem type. No, it says unprocessable entity again. Okay, so just as I was saying, the patch usually means that you can only send partial data. But the problem here, if we try to do that, we'll get a validation error here. And why it happens is because we have a required price field, and we can't omit that. And as I said, it validates automatically if you pass it like that. So we can do a workaround. For that, we will just create another model, and it will be called gem patch. We don't need a table for that. It will be just for validation. And now we will set something here, and we can make them optional as well. Let's make all fields optional, like that. Here we have some default already, but okay, let's do it optional as well. And pass the gem patch here instead. So if we try again and do that, we have 200, but we still don't have a response. So to get a response, it's actually nicely formatted. We need to do one more thing here. We need to specify response model. And our response model will be gem. And here, exactly the same thing. And now let's try again. And we got it. And as you can see, it did what we asked it to do. 160. Let's make it, let's only just make it not available. Okay, don't forget to delete that comma. And now it's not available. And now let's try with comma. And you see it does that thing. So don't forget that. It's a very annoying part. Okay, update gem set. Same thing. We can just specify something here. Let's make it that way. And like that. Now we get a nice response. And for that, we only needed to show the response model. So we're only left with delete method, which is very straightforward. Once again, we are using the same URL. Now define delete gem. We're taking ID, and we don't really need a gem model here. We'll just find gem just like we did before. And now we do session delete and passing the gem that we found to there and committing session commit. And what we can also do is put the status code in here, and it will just respond with that by default. And here we can import it from both Starly and from Starlet. Import, I think, Starlet responses HT How was it? So the usual one is HTTP 204 no content if you deleted something, and started status. Okay. So yeah, and now let's try to delete. So we're deleting number 350. And we got our 204, and it will no longer exist in our database if we try to look at that. So as you can see, hmm, 350. Okay, I didn't refresh it. Yeah, it doesn't exist. I was thinking I was going crazy. Okay. So, and while we're at it, let's change get as well, since it's kind of doesn't have response model, and now we know how to do that. Let's add response model gem. It will be just like session, just like here. And what if we don't find? If there is not any gem found, then we can return a JSON response that it's not found. So return JSON response state. Okay, import JSON response from started as well. Status code HTTP 404. 404 not found. And here's HTTP 404 not found. Okay, now let's say we wanna try and reach something that doesn't exist. Okay, not here, but here. No, it's all of them, just one. And it got us 404. And now if we just try 35, we get 500. Okay, what is the deal? We should just return gem, I guess, since we do it that way now. Still something is incorrect. Okay, I'm returning something completely different. That's kind of strange for me. Okay, I think we don't even need that here. Let's try again. Yes, sure. Okay, now it works. Yeah, okay. Good. So now we have covered all the main HTTP methods and how to interact with a database through them. But suppose we only want to register users to be able to add new stones to our store. And maybe we even want only seller to add a new gem. So let's go ahead and make authentication. For that, we're going to our models again, and we're going to create user models. Okay. User models. Let's import SQL model as before. Create class user SQL model table true. It will have the same ID. Import optional again. It will have a username. We want to have password for our username. It will be also string field, but we want to make a plain text one, and let's make it a requirement to be at the very least 6 characters. And that's how you can do it constraints here overall. You pass it into field. Something that you can do in SQL Alchemy or regular SQL, you can pass here into field. We'll have email, which is also a string. We can put created that when the username was created, and it will be daytime, time, daytime, and it automatically imported that for me. By default will be daytime now, and we want to know if our user is a seller of diamonds, and default will be false. Okay, so we will have our new database, but for it we need to update it, and it's something that no one covers for some reason. In all tutorials that I've seen, when they change database, they just say like, oh, okay, let's just drop our old database and create a new one from the start. So it kind of doesn't make sense. No one does that. So I wanted to cover it and show you how you can do that with Alembic. But first, let's also create a user input one, because we don't want them to input their own ID, and we don't need them to input when it was created. So let's do user input. It will also be SQLModel. So it will be, let's copy all that stuff. We don't need that. Here we don't need that, and we want to verify their password, so we'll just do password 2 as well. And let's create a validation. For that we use the validator password 2 field, and we import it from Pydantic validator. And let's check if the passwords that imported match. It's actually class 1. Quarks. Okay, if password in values, which are all values, is all our class values, and value is a specific one. So if we're checking if password is in values and the value itself is on same as values password, then we'll raise an error that value error. Say passwords don't match. Don't match. Okay. And return which will be just the valid password. Okay. Now Actually, we can also index our username, since it's something that will probably will be looked up quite often. So we can create a database index, and we do it like that: index true. If you don't know what index in databases, it basically creates for a field that creates a specific index that makes it easy to retrieve, and it will retrieve that information much faster if you create an index, but at the expense of writing some extra information. Basically, at the expense of writing that information. So writings will be more slow and will take some more space. But readings will be much faster. So for some fields that are more commonly read then they are created, it makes sense to create an index in database if they are frequently accessed. So we can do it just like that. Okay. And also we will need to install some validator for Pydantic, because pip install but it's actually if only we need email. Okay, we can actually email can be email string, and it's something that Pydantic has. And it will verify that the email is valid, since it's also not super simple to do it by yourself. And here we also put email string. And for that validation to work, we will install one more thing. Pip install Pydantic email, like that. Okay, and it's installed. Okay, now we want to add that stuff into our database. How do we do that? Well, we will use Alembic for it. And let's go ahead to our requirements and add Alembic as well. Okay. Now, install Alembic. So we install our requirements.txt. Oops. Yeah, I can't spell today. Okay. What's next? Now that we installed Alembic is something that is, if you're familiar with Django, you never had to use it. But if you, because Django deals with all the migrations by itself. But if you used Flask and created anything more or less not super simple, then you probably know how it works. We can use Alembic for our migrations of a database, and we can add new fields, but it usually works only with it usually works with SQL Alchemy. Okay, we don't need that stuff here. And it's also not super straightforward how to make it work with SQLModel. And I'm going to show you what you have to do to make it work. So first we'll create init. So initialize Alembic, and the name for the folder will be migrations. So you can name it however you want. So as you see, it had appeared with several files inside it. Now you see script.py.macro. Open that file, and here, after import SQL Alchemy, also import SQL model. It's one thing that we need to do. Then go to env.py, and here we also need but here we will from SQL model import SQL model Then another important thing here, you have to very actually important thing. Here you have to import your models, gem models, import everything for it to get into metadata. I will explain what will happen if you. So target metadata is from where it will take the information of your database and for how it will track it. And here we will just use SQL model that we imported dot metadata. And metadata has all the information about fields and other stuff that is in your database. But it's very important to not forget to import all your models, because if you don't do that, it will look into what is already inside of your database. It won't find that what has to be inside the database. It won't find that it needs all that stuff inside. And the first thing it will want to do is to just drop every table that you have and just basically like delete your database. And you don't want that to happen, so don't forget to import that. Okay, now after we did that, we need to generate first migration file. And for that we write Alembic revision, then slash, not slash, how it's called, I forgot, auto generate m, and let's go, and here is a message, it's a commentary in it basically. Let's do that. Okay, can't load plugin SQL Alchemy dialects driver. Where is here? No such module. We forgot to write in Alembic ini. There is one more thing that we need to write. SQL Alchemy URL here. It's something that we need to change. And it shouldn't be a string. Yeah, it should be just like that. Okay. Now, you see it said take the table user. And it should have created a new version of migration. Now look here. Upgrade is what runs every time that you use the upgrade command. If it says drop table here, then you're doing something wrong. You probably forgot to import models. But here we see everything is right. And we will try to apply that migration now. For that, we just write Alembic upgrade have. Looks like it worked. So let's check. And yet has a user table now. You can also see that it created Alembic version here, and it stores the version in your database itself. So if you screwed something up during the Alembic part and you want to just delete that stuff from the beginning and start from the beginning, you can delete migration folder and everything. Don't forget to also delete the Alembic version, drop that table from database. Otherwise it will tell you that it can't find that version, and will just tell you that it can't do anything about it. So yes. Okay, so we now know how to do that. Now about the structure of your, well, we already have some pretty nice structure going, but the only problem that we have is we kind of have too many endpoints in the main, and it makes more sense to make a separate directory for that. So let's do that. I'll call it endpoints. And first we will make gem endpoints that we already have. Now we should import create engine and session again. No, my bad. It's not where we do that. We can just import all the stuff that we have at main here. Not import, I mean basically cut it, paste here, and do a couple other things. First of all, we will need to change that app here to something else. How it's usually done is we have include router, I think it's called that way, or not that way. It's just, okay, here we just have API router and we create an instance of that. And let's call it like gem router. Now everywhere where we have the app, we can change it to gem router. So app gem router. In PyCharm it's Control R what I did. Here you write what you want and here what to change it and replace all. So yes, first of all do that. API router is in FastAPI. So import that. Then, okay, we need to import our session as well. And our session, is it in DB? It kind of makes more sense, I think, if we also put that in DB. Okay, first of all that stuff that we took is in here. Now it's gray, so it's probably used here. Okay. Now we don't really need to create DB and tables like that anymore. So that way, but still, yeah. Okay, now we changed it all here, but we also need to import all our models, and we need to import session. And let's also move session to our DB, so we don't have to import it from there at all. Okay, for that, oops. We just do like that and like that, and everywhere where we had session before, we now need to import it from DB. So where was it? Well, I guess only here, right? From DB dot DB import our session. Endpoints. Okay, it's a different one. Yeah. And here engine is no longer in the main. So also change it here if we will use that again. All right, so let's see if that stuff works or no. Does it? Yeah, it looks like everything's fine and working. So now we have that kind of structure. The database stuff is here. Do not get any circular imports. Have separate migrations folder. Have endpoints folder. And let's look, by the way, if it's still inside our stuff, and it's not. And why it's not is because after we create a router like that, we need to register it within with our app. And how to do it is app. No, not quite like that. It was include router. Include router. Now we import that router. Gem router and import from endpoints. And let's look if it appeared. Ta-da! And it's all here. Great. That's how you do it every time that you make a new router. And you can interesting thing about routers, you can set some parameters right in here and they will apply to all of your routes. Now I will show you later what we can do with that. And we can also set a tag here. And you will see what's that. Tag. Tags. And let's put it's in the list and gems. Okay. And now if we look at here, it's called gems here. And for authentication, okay, we didn't create any user yet, but soon we will. Now we will need some more stuff first. We'll need by GWT. We'll make a GWT authentication. It's pronounced as JOT apparently. So that's how I'm going to be calling it. So bcrypt as well. It's a hashing library and passlib. It's our new dependencies that we need to install. Yeah. Okay. Okay, what is JOT by itself? It's something that typically looks like, can I do it here? No. So, okay, let me just Google that and say, example. Yeah, it looks like that. It's encoded into 3 separate parts. First one is header that includes the hashing algorithm that is used and type, that is type of token. Second one is payload data. And it's kind of not a very good quality. Okay. Second one is payload data. That includes the name, like username, when token was issued, when will it expire, and some other information. And it's all encoded in here. This whole information gets encoded and is basically that. And it has verification of signature. And what it does, you can basically it signs that this thing is valid. And how it does that? It uses your secret key. Here is secret key that you will specify, and it uses information of both of payload and header and encodes them once again. And this is this. So if you change anything in payload or header and say, let's say someone wants to mess with the token and say that it expires later than it actually does, then it won't verify here because it won't give the same hash at the end, and it won't work. So that's kind of how it works. So it shows that the token is trustworthy. Then let's create our stuff. Okay, so we will create a separate thing for authentication, and it will be kind of maybe a lot to write, but the beauty of it is you only have to do it once. You create one authentication, and after that, okay, you can use it everywhere. And why? How is that JOT token is different from usual session-based authentication, and when does it make sense? Well, if you are using FastAPI, there is a good chance you're using it for something like microservices. And then you can have separate several databases. And what it means is if you do regular session authentication that stores the authentication data inside the database, then every time you're switching to another microservice, user will have to authenticate again. Because his data was in the different database, and it kind of doesn't make sense, and it's annoying. And JOT, the cool thing about it is it stores that information on the client side, and then you just have to provide the token that it sends to you. After it verifies your identity, it sends a token, and you, from client, you can use it anywhere. You can use it on several of your servers, and no one has to ever write it, like authenticate again at the different servers. So, okay, let's get to coding. From FastAPI import security. From FastAPI security, we will need to import HTTP bearer token, and authorization credentials. Then from passlib context, we need CRUD context, and we also need JOT. So okay, let's create a handler for our authorization class. So security HTTP bearer. Here we're passing what will be used for our encryption. And bcrypt is kind of a standard. And here we'll have some secret key, super secret, that, as I said, will be used in the validation part of JOT token. Okay, now we don't want to store password as text. Never do that. It's not secure. You probably know that by now. So we will hash our password using our bcrypt. So we return self context hash password. Okay, so we made the password hasher. Now we need to make a verify function, verify password. So password hashed password. Yeah, that's what we need. And we will return self context hash verify, and we provided our password and the hashed password. So there is a verifying method that takes a password that was provided and the one that we have in the database, and it will see if it's the same ones. And for token itself, we will do encode token. We will need user ID for that, and we will create that payload. So expiry, it's daytime, and you can set your own however you want, but let's do, you see now, you can just add time delta of daytime, time delta, and however you want. Let's do like 8 hours, for example. Then issue that. It will be now. So that. And who did it is user ID. Okay, we have our payload and now we need to encode it. So return jot encode payload. Payload, but it also takes secret that we have and algorithm that will be used. We'll use this one. Okay, now we have encode and we need to also decode that. So decode token self token. We get the token and try to decode that. Payload is jot decode token self secret, using our secret, our algorithms here, yeah, return payload and the user. We will return the user if it's correct one. It will be his ID, as you see. But token might expire, and we need to then provide expired signature error. We'll raise HTTP exception status code (401). And we can write that expired signature. And let's make another wrong invalid token error. And well, it's same, but invalid token. Okay, now we can create a wrapper around that to use it. Oops. So we take authorization credentials as auth, and it's security and security here, our HTTP bearer, and we return self. Okay. Decode token auth.credentials. Okay. Okay. So let's create something that we can retrieve, how we can retrieve users that we have, first of all. For that, we can make endpoints for user endpoints. Then, but we can also we can put it into our repos, okay. User repos. Something that might be reusable, like that. So select all users. How will we select them? Well, as always, with session, providing the engine in there as session. Okay, let's import that. Import session, import engine from DB. Statement will be just select, that we will also import from here. Select user, and user is our model that we also have to import. And then result will be session execute statement, and we need all. So we'll retrieve in everyone, and then we'll just return the result. Okay. Now let's make the endpoints. So, first of all, we will create a new router again. User router. And it will be API router once again. So import that. And we can put German points here, so we have some reference. Okay. Now we also need to import our auth handler that we just created in auth. Okay, so user router, and we need, well, first of all, we need users, so we need to create a registration page for them. Registration. By default, it will send 201, which is created to have tag of users. And we can also add a description actually. So let's try to do that. Description, register new user. So define register. It will take a user input actually, which won't be the same as the user that we have. Yeah, that user input. And we need to also import that. We can import both. Okay. Now we can use the function that we just created now. Select all users. Import that as well. A lot of imports. And why we need to take the users? Well, if someone is creating the new user, you don't want to create the same username twice. So we need to check if it exists, and how we can do that is, well, we can do like username. If any username is the same as username, the one that is provided for X users, so we're looking at all users here and looking if any username is the same. Then we raise exception. HTTP exception status code will be 400. And we'll say that the username is taken. Okay, now we will hash our password. Not our, but the person who is registering, and we'll use our auth handler for that. Handler get password hash users dot password. Not users, user dot password. Okay. Now we create an instance of a new user, just like regular Python class. Username, and we put all the stuff that he provided us, but the hash password instead of regular password. User email, and it also can be a seller, so user is a seller. Okay, now we added to session as always, which we have to import as well from DB. Okay, add user, now commit, and let's return JSON response that the username was created. Not username, but oops. Okay, JSON is written like that from Starlet, and we want to say that it was created indeed. One created. Also import that. Okay. Let's look at what we have now. So let's go back to our stuff and update. Okay, we forgot to register router. Now in main, we also have include router, user router, import that. Now it should appear. And yes, it's here. Okay, try it out. We have request body, and let's try. Okay. Okay. Let's try to see if our validation works first of all, and others will be fine. Okay, we can see that it doesn't like what, and it says ensure this value has at least 6 characters. And now let's do 213, but here we will say 214 or 15. Okay, and now it says passwords don't match, so validation works, as you see. And now let's create that stuff and send 201 response. So it means that the user was created, and we can also look at users themselves if we create an endpoint for that. Okay, let's create a login page as well. not page, but endpoint. It will also be a post. It will be a login. Same tag. Can find login. Which takes in user login. Okay, we didn't create the user login yet. Something that we will have them we will need it to send us basically just username. Let's do that in our models for user models. Okay, it will just be class user login, and we only need two things. We need SQL model. Sure. Username can be email actually, but username is fine. And password, both are strings. No table here, sure. We just need it for that. And now import that. And we're trying to, first of all, we'll check if that user exists overall that is trying to log in. And user found will be, okay, but for that we'll need to create a function of finding a specific user. And let's do that. It's pretty simple. Find user. We take the name. Make session as always. And we will select where username dot username is the same as name. And we will return the first one. So return session exec statement dot first. Okay. And we can also put one here instead, but it will give us an error if it won't be found. Okay, so user found is find user. Import that. And user, oops, not name. No, user dot username. Okay. If we didn't find it, so if not user found, you will need to return some exceptions. Do we have something? Yeah, we can do not found here and return that. And return HTTP exception of status fault is 401. It's actually fine. And we don't want to tell a user that user doesn't exist. Because it's not really secure, because hackers can try to check whole database and basically find out which names exist and which doesn't, and we don't need to give that information. So we'll just say that it's invalid username or password. And now we want to check if it's we want to check the token itself, and for that we use our out handler again and use the verify password method. and send user password and user. So this one is in the database, and user found. No, the user found is the one in the database. We'll see what's in the database for his hash password and what this user provides and see if they match. So we use that verify, and then now we say if it's not verified, then we're also, or we can we can also not return race. Yes, basically same. And we want to create token if everything is fine, using our method encode token. Encode token user found, and we remember we pass the username there, and we can return the token. Return token. Okay, cool. Let's try that. So we have our login, and I wish I remembered what the hell did I write first time. What was some book 1, 2, 3, whatever. It was dude with, okay, I don't remember. Let's create new person. It will be me, for example. Password. Okay, string 1, and user 2 example, and same so created. Okay, now let's try to log in. Try it out. String 1. And as you see, we got our token. Perfect. Now, how can we use that? Well, and yeah, okay, well, you won't see the log here just yet, but we can now try to restrict our views to something, to only authorized users. So we import the user as a dependency. It's called a dependency injection, and we need that depends thing specifically here, and it's also from FastAPI, and what it does you will see. So our handler import that stuff as well. Get okay, we need some specific user as well. That's kind of a thing. Okay, 1 second. Our wrapper. Okay, first we'll just pass our wrapper here, but not call it, just like that. Okay. Depends itself needs to be callable, and now we're passing that our wrapper to that this function, and it's callable, as we can see. Callable is basically something that has a call method inside it, and it can be a class with a call method that you created, or it can be a function or whatever other callables are in Python. So let's try and see if it works actually, the create gem part. Okay, now do that, and you will see something. You will see that now it has a lock here, and can I do that? No, I can't, because it's forbidden, not authenticated, as you can see. So we can authorize. Can authorize with the token that we've been given, and sure, I didn't write it down last time, so I'll have to log in again. Oops. Okay, now I got the token. And authorize. And we're authorized now. You can see that we can now try and create something. And we have 200, so it worked. And it's a restricted view, as you can see. If you want to restrict all views of a certain router, you can test it inside the router itself. Then it will be like that. Okay, take API router and you write dependencies, and it's a list. Depends again, and our handler and our wrapper in our example. And let's look again. It will restrict everything here, only to authorized user. We don't need that, but you can see how it can be useful at some points. Okay. We'll just do the specific ones. What else do we need to restrict? Well, besides post, we need to restrict put. We don't want someone to make a gem cost 0. We won't really make any profit doing that. Oh, I'm putting in the wrong place. So yeah, let's also restrict that. Create patch will be also restricted, and ensure delete will be restricted. But okay, but what if someone who's a seller, and let's do that. Let's check if user is seller, then if not users, so we don't have to put all that. Return, we can either raise or return something like not authorized. So it will be 401 JSON response, status code for one not authorized, and I spelled it wrong, I guess. Author. No, it's unauthorized. Okay. So if someone is not a seller, he won't be able to create. He's just a customer in our platform. So, and we can also write description for our functions, and you can see that it uses OpenAPI, as you can see, that all stuff that automatically generates it. And now it shows the description here as well. We'll do it with every time. Okay. So yeah, okay. We don't want some random user and random seller to change our diamond's price. So we need to check if it's the same user who created it. And how can we do that is, well, first of all, we'll need to get the current user somehow. And how can we do it? Yeah, I'll show you. Okay. So let's go back to auth and auth handler, and let's create a new method here. It will be called get current user. Self takes in auth as well as anything else take auth. Okay, one moment. Auth wrapper takes same thing basically that we need. Okay. Now, username is self-decode token of credentials. If username is none, so if we don't find anything, then we will raise exception. Well, let's make exception first. So credentials exception will be HTTP exception instance status code status dot import status from starlet HTTP 401 unauthorized. And well, we can just do it that way. We can actually add more headers and like some details. So okay, detail. Let's say could not validate credentials or something like that. Okay, now we will raise the credentials exception. Now let's find our user using the find username, and we're reusing the function that we created earlier. And if user is none, or if not user, we'll also raise the same exception. Okay, and then we'll just return user. And that's how you can get the current user. And let's also create an endpoint for that to be helpful. User endpoints. Okay, define me. First use router get to be users me. Okay, tags as always. And well, user is what we just created. Get current user. Okay, just had a brain fart. Get current user. It will have input as user, and we will use the thing that we have just created, and we use depends again. But it's of handler dot get current user without parentheses. Port FastAPI depends, and we just return user. Okay. And let's see. Get current user. We need to authorize again, unfortunately. Okay, my token was this. And it will be valid for 8 hours. Once the 8 hours end, then okay, it returns string. Why does it return string? I am not a string. I am Evgeny. Try again. Yeah, okay. That's me. That is true. Okay, now as you can see, we have a method to get the current logged in user. And we can use it again to restrict, to basically make authorization. So authentication is done. Now let's do some authorization. We'll see if the person who's trying to modify the gem is the same person who created it. And now in update gem, let's see if. But how do we know if a person who created it? We don't have the field in the database for now, and we need to also create that. Okay, let's create the seller ID field in our gem models. Okay, it will be new seller ID. It will be same as before, but it will be user ID. And here it will be also kind of same, but it will backpopulate user. We can actually not do the backpopulates here, just that is fine, and it will be just seller. And sure, here will be a user. Yeah, let's import the user. So we'll have the new relationship of our gems, and we can see later if the person who created that is the same. So let's do the same thing with something looking at here. Okay, let's do Alembic revision again. Add seller to gem model. Okay, it detected that change. We can look once again that the stuff happens. And yeah, it's what we need. Okay, now upgrade that. No support for alter of constraints and SQLite dialect. Okay, let's. It's like, I think it's because of that nullable here. Okay, let's see if we wanna do it that way. No. Okay, something about SQLite here. Okay, I think we can make a workaround. It's a little thing about SQLite, and let's go to environment.py, and we need to add renders batch true here and here. Okay, let's try again. Okay, I think it did that. Yeah, at column, everything seems like it worked. Let's look at database structure, gem, and yeah, it has seller ID now. Okay, good. Okay, now we can Right. Let's also change our views to see who created the gem, who is selling it. And we have a user here, so we'll just have, how was it called again? Our new, oops, not here. Column is, it's called seller. Okay, so seller is user the ID, seller ID. Same as the field name. Okay. And seller user. I'm not sure it's necessary though, but yeah. And so it will, let's try to create a gem as authorized, authenticated user. Okay. Once again, I have to do that stuff. I'm logged in. Now let's try to make a post, try it out. Here doesn't matter. Make size 5, clarity 3, colors 2F. Okay, execute. Internal server error. Okay, something happened. Look at run. String object has no attribute is seller. Where I'm checking for that. Okay, we're passing a username. And we need to find the person first, I guess. Or are we? Okay. Okay. I was returning I think it was about my auth thing that I made. No, here I'm returning user. Okay, let's see what is our user. And okay, my bad. We need to do not proper now. Since now we can get current user, we will return current user. And it will return the instance of a user which has a field C seller. Okay, can't look at it anymore. Okay, and it worked. Okay, thank God it worked. And we can see that it's put my seller in there, my seller ID. And we can see it in the database as well. It will be in the very end. And let's try to change it now as well. Okay, it's this one. Seller ID is still null. So because I'm providing user.id. Because I'm putting it in the wrong place. Shouldn't be here. Sure, it should be here, and this also should be here. Okay. And let's do it again. Into 6, 2, just to distinguish it better. Okay. Seller ID and refresh, and yes, it registered my ID and that it was in fact me that created that. And now let's also check if the person, So user who created that is the same person who is trying to change the information. If not, user, first of all, we need to check if it's a seller. If it's not a seller, it's just the end for him. Okay, so, or if gem found, that gem that we found, and his seller ID isn't the same as the user ID, then we return that he is not authorized. So we have it right here. So on that. Okay. And same with patch actually. We want the exact same thing here. And same with delete as well. We don't want someone to delete the stuff that we put. It's our bread and butter. So, okay, the ID of it was 509. And let's try to change. Okay, let's try patch since it's easier. Let's just try and make it very cheap. 509. 506, let's say. Something that we can't have access to. And we have 500. We can do that. And if we have 509, the one that we did, okay, it wasn't because we can't do that. It was because we had one more error. Okay, I forgot. Once again, I am doing the very same mistakes. We're passing the very same thing here. Okay. 506, again, trying. 401, unauthorized. Okay, that seems like something we expect. And 509, we created it so we could change it. And that's how authorization works, basically. You could authenticate, authorize, and everything, just like we wanted to. So, we could do all that, and now let's do something about retrieving information. Since now it's kind of limited, we can just retrieve all of our stuff. That now doesn't work correctly here, yes? Or does it? Yeah, it does, okay. We can just retrieve all our stuff or specific ID, but what if we want to filter our data? It's something that is also very common in all backend applications, and something you need to know how to do. So let's try to do that and make some new functionality for our retrieving views and endpoints. So let's say our users want the ability to filter gems by type and by price. And maybe our sellers also want to only have a specific view for only their products. And let's try to add that functionality. First, for gems that are only made by the seller. Okay, well, let's do router, gem router dot get to be dot gems, not dot slash. Okay, slash gems slash seller me, which makes sense. I guess response model will be. We'll talk about it later. Okay, It will be kind of complicated here. We'll try to do that. We can create new tag that will be a seller, let's say. Now define, okay, gems seller. Not very good name, but okay. So user as always depends. Get current user now. I won't make that mistake again. So first of all, let's check if user is seller. Here, if he's not a seller, then once again we return unauthorized because he doesn't have anything. He can go there. And then let's create select query, import again from SQLModel, and we will have our shortcut, and we want to retrieve those where gem seller ID is this user ID. So makes sense, I guess. And we'll also want to join to show properties, so we'll do that other shortcut that we had for showing several things at once, and join gem properties. And well, we need to execute the function, the query statement, and return all that he has. So all, and it will be, well, it will be something pretty complicated. We can see what. Okay, return gems. You can see how the response looks like after we try that. Okay, now we have to refresh because we have new endpoint, and I think I am again unauthorized, unfortunately. Yeah, now I need to put my token again. Okay. Now let's try again. And we have a nested response. So it's a list. Inside this list, there is a dictionary. And dictionary is also nested. It has both gem and gem properties. And what if we want to show the response model for that here? Well, let's try to write it down, the thing that we have. Well, as I said, it's a list. So response model. Let's make it a new line. List from typing. Okay. I think you can also actually import just regular list, or it's only since Python 3.10 or something like that. But yes, so it has a dictionary. And what you may have noticed is, well, first of all, dictionary is made out of string here. So this part is string. And this part is another object, but it has two different objects. And how do we write that in typing? Well, first of all, it makes sense to make another list. And first of ours is string, as we know. But next one is both gem and gem properties. So let's try to do that. So, gem and gem properties. So we'll make another one. And you already see it doesn't like what we did here, because we can't do it that way. But how we can do it is to create something called union. And we will import it from typing as well. Union from typing. And now let's try and see if it actually changed something. I mean, it didn't change anything. It's not supposed to right now. But it's nonetheless correct. If it wasn't, then we would have a mistake in response model. So if you need something like that, it will be union. So dictionary, and the first part is string, and something is either gem or gem properties, like that. And well, what if we want to call it differently again? Then we can do kind of like something like we did last time. We can do it like that. Response will be gem with small letter, then props for gem props and gems. So let's see again if we did that. Yeah, it works. And it's now gem and just props. So okay, let's try to go and add filters to our gems. So now users want to only see rupees, or maybe they only want the cheap or expensive stuff. And how can we do that? Well, we pass some parameter, like here, and I'll call it LT, so less than or equals for short LT. Also optional. Query params will be all optional because it kind of makes sense. You don't want it to be required most of the time. And we can pass that LT later, and if we pass it, then we will check. If it's passed, we can make one more select. We can make gems where gem, don't forget that it's not with a small one, it's a model. Gem price is less or equals LT, the one that we passed. And same with, let's say, one greater or equals. Then we'll do it just the same, but GT, and it will be almost same, but GT, and larger or equals than that. But the thing here is that we already returning all our stuff. So yeah, it will return the instances already. It won't return the session object, and we don't want that. So we'll have to write it again. We will do something that can be chained, like here. Something that can be chained. So we just write select again, gem properties, and join on gem properties. So our regular select of all gems. And now after we do all that, only now we basically evaluate it in the database and do the execute query exec gems and return all. And now we just return gems. Okay, now let's see how that works. It should work beautifully. And gems, okay, we need to first do that. Thankfully, we don't need to authorize for that. And you see now we have two more things that are entirely optional. It says it's a query. And now let's try to make something that more than $50,000. So we want only expensive stuff, and let's see. 226,000, 170,000, 54. So everything, we can just see content length here is 44K. If we change that and make it less, it will be more. So it works. Great. Now, well, let's say we also want to and we can do, well, both of those at the same time, sure. So less or equals than 8,000 and more than 5,000, and it will be smaller once again. Yeah. Okay. And let's say we also want to filter gem by type. What if we only want rubies? We don't care about diamonds at all. Think it's a scam or something. And then we can do it. Well, it's kind of interesting how we do something that is with an enum. Well, the same way, we also add type. That will be also optional, and take in our gem type. As you remember, our enum was called gem types. So yeah, import that non-default. Okay, it fixed that it's non-default, but we will provide the default like that. Let's say again. Okay, yeah. Great. Now, if we provided the type, what do we do? Type, it's pretty basic now. Say gems where again, gem type is type. That is all basically. And look how nice it looks in the documents. If we refresh the page, we can actually select out of our enums here. And let's say we want only rubies. And we get only rubies. We want only emerald. We only get emerald. Okay, great. But now what if we want both ruby and emerald? How do you do that? Yeah, that's a little more interesting. Well, gem type, first of all, since it can now take several parameters, it will be a list. So let's put a list here. Okay. But also, remember I told you that if parameter is declared to be of the type of pydantic model, it will be interpreted as a request body. And that's what will happen here. And that's what we really don't want, because get doesn't have body. Let's look here. And it won't work like that. You see request body, and it doesn't have request. You have a type error because it can't have. And what you do is you have to specify that it's a query now. And you do it like that. You import query from FastAPI as well. And inside query, you pass a default parameter. And now you can select any stuff that you want. You see, now you can do that. Let's say ruby and emerald. And we have error, but because we forgot to do something. Yeah, sure, we forgot to change the lookup itself. No, we only do it like that. And it's another, so if we know that we are passing like only two parameters here, like I mean one parameter, a list of two, then we can sure take them like just pass or that, but we often, and even in this case, we don't know how many parameters will be passed, not parameters, how they say, arguments in the parameter. And or won't really work. But if let's see if it was or. Let's show how we will do that. We'll do gems where or then gem dot gem type is type 1. How we'll do that? We'll know that type is basically 2, then we do type 1, type 2 is type, then we do like that, then comma second thing, or type 2, and it will work, but it will only work if the two things are passed, otherwise it will just break, and we don't want that. And for some reason I couldn't find how to do it in the docs, how to filter by multiple, but I just kind of makes sense that it would use the in like it does in SQL Alchemy, and we don't import anything like with or, but instead what we do is we do gem type dot in, and it's not even shown here, and then we pass the type inside here. Gem type in, and not just in with underscore, sure, because in is a reserved word. So, and let's try see if it does what we wanted to do. Ruby Emerald, and it works. We see Emerald, Ruby, no diamonds here. So awesome. That's how you can filter stuff that is choice field by just one or several. What else can we do? We can also order stuff. It's pretty simple. Well, let's say we wanted to be ordered by gem type. So we just chain the order by, and then say by what. We also pass the same gem, the gem type. Basically, that's all we need to do it. And now, if you will look, diamond ruby, it will just be diamond, and then all the rubies in the end. Okay, good. What if we want to do the multiple orderings by, let's say, by both name and by price? We'll just chain it once again, and we put order by, and then put gem dot price. So let's check if it works. And let's see, first we get something that for some reason doesn't cost anything. We won't make any money that way. But as you see, the price is increasing every time, so the ordering also works. Now it's 64, 96, and then all the way to big ones. But if we want the reverse order, all we should do is just put that here. And let's do it again. And now the order is reversed, and with all the parameters you do it like that. And lastly, if you just want to undo all the orderings that were made before, you just do again order by, and you put none in here. It will just nullify any orderings that were passed before. So now it works. We have working database, authentication, and endpoints. We learned how to create and migrate database with SQLModel, and create views and repositories, dependency injection, how to structure our project. So thank you for watching, and leave a like if you liked the video. If it was useful, you can share it and whatnot. I'll be glad. And well, maybe I'll make one more video with more advanced stuff. But yeah, for like maybe concurrency, because I didn't touch on concurrency in this video with async, HTTP2, maybe WebSockets, salary workers. Well, if you're interested, you can comment about that. So I hope it was useful for you. So thank you for watching. Bye.